we begin, take a moment to arrive. Take a breath, and let the noise of the day settle just a little. This is EQ, Emotional Intelligence in the Age of Overwhelm, a series created for family caregivers, healthcare workers, leaders, and everyday people who carry more than they ever admit out loud. If you've ever felt stretched thin, misunderstood, or emotionally overloaded by a world that never slows down, you're in the right place. These chapters blend real-world experience from the emergency room with the science of emotional regulation, resilience, and human connection. Each episode is designed to help you understand yourself more clearly, respond more intentionally, and move through life with steadier emotional footing. This is not about perfection. This is about practice, the daily work of becoming the person your younger self needed, and the person your future self will thank you for. Allow me to introduce the reason why this book came about. Before you hear a single lesson from this book, I want to tell you something plainly. If you are a family caregiver, a parent, a nurse, a leader, or simply someone trying to stay steady in a world that never slows down, you are not overwhelmed because you're weak. You're overwhelmed because you were never given the emotional tools the modern world now demands. This series was created for you. For the people who hold families together. For the ones who show up even when they're exhausted. For the quiet heroes who carry emotional weight that no one else sees. EQ, in the Age of Overwhelm, was written to give you what most of us were never taught: clear, compassionate, practical emotional intelligence, rooted in real life, not theory. Caregivers, families, educators, and everyday people deserve access to emotional clarity without barriers. So as you listen to the preface, acknowledgement, and introduction, I invite you to do one thing. Let these words meet you where you are. Let this be the beginning of a steadier, kinder way of moving through the world. Your emotional life deserves this level of care. This book is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider regarding any medical condition. The quiet strength of the heart. An expert did not write this book, at least not the kind with a wall full of framed degrees. Instead, it was penned by a traveler who lived the lessons within these pages, often learning them the hard way. Long before emotional intelligence was a buzzword in corporate boardrooms, it was forged in the heat of my childhood, where survival outweighed self-expression, and the world was viewed through a lens of scarcity. Growing up in a third-world country provided a masterclass in unpredictability. Watching my parents work endless hours was a stark education. Life can change in a heartbeat. Back then, insecurities and anger were heavy burdens, though the language to name them hadn't yet been found, leaving them to simmer like a pot left too long on the stove. The transition to a New York emergency room, a place previously known only through a television screen, brought a new, sharper breed of challenge. It was a trial by fire that tested not only my nursing skills but also my very identity as an Asian immigrant. Between the chaos of the ER and the characters who walked through their doors, life was a constant reminder that standing on level ground required working twice as hard as everyone else. During those formative years in a Bronx ER, a question from my head nurse Jane Skehan became a permanent fixture in my memory. During one busy night, when everyone was barely able to take a bathroom break, and the tension was high, she asked me a question: how do you handle the stress? Where does your patience come from in dealing with these characters in moments of craziness? At the time, my answer wasn't clear. What was clear was that losing my temper carried a much higher price tag than keeping it in check. Reacting impulsively would have slammed shut the very doors that had been so difficult to pry open. In a world not designed to be gentle, survival, and eventually, the ability to thrive, depended entirely on the mastery of self-regulation. Looking back, these were the early silent practices of EQ. It meant mastering the pause before the reaction, a skill that's much harder than any medical procedure. It meant seeing the fear behind a patient's aggression and the shared humanity within the chaos. Staying calm was never a natural gift. It was the only anchor steady enough to hold through the storm. Time has revealed a vital truth. Emotional intelligence is not a talent. It is a skill, a practice, a choice. And it is a choice available to anyone, regardless of their starting point. This book bridges the gap between those raw, real-life experiences and the realization that EQ is what steadies a life. Now, in these golden years, there is a quiet pride in having become the person that younger struggling self once needed. I decided to offer this time, through this book, the answer to a question asked decades ago, not just as a guide, but as a roadmap for becoming the person you were always meant to be. So, what I'm sharing here is a collection of lessons learned, but it was not a journey taken alone. I am deeply indebted to the individuals who served as the first mirrors for my emotional growth, providing both the challenges and the support that forged my understanding of emotional intelligence. First, my deepest gratitude goes to Jane, the head nurse in the Bronx emergency room. Thank you for asking the question that changed the trajectory of my life. Your curiosity about my patients forced me to look inward and discover the quiet power of the pause long before I had a name for it. To Millie Chua, our nurse manager in the emergency room, thank you for your leadership and for being a steady presence amid the most chaotic shifts. Your mentorship in navigating the intense pressures of the ER taught me that resilience is not just about surviving the storm, but about maintaining one's humanity within it. To the patients and characters of the Brooklyn and Bronx emergency rooms, you were my greatest teachers. You showed me the fear behind aggression and the pain behind anger, and you challenged me every day to lead with my vibration rather than my volume. Most importantly, to my wife, Jenny, thank you for being my anchor through every chapter of this journey, from our early years as immigrants to these golden years of reflection. Your love, patience, and unwavering belief in me have been the true foundation of my emotional strength. You are the heartbeat of this book. Finally, to my mom and dad, and the family I grew up with in a third-world country, though we lacked the language for these concepts then, your strength in the face of scarcity provided the raw materials for everything I have become. This book is a tribute to all of you. Emotional intelligence is often discussed as if it were the domain of experts, psychologists, or people with advanced training. But the truth is simpler. Emotional intelligence belongs to all of us. It is a human skill, shaped not in classrooms but in the real world, in families, workplaces, relationships, and the quiet moments where we choose whom we want to be. This book was not written from the top down. It was written from the ground up. It comes from growing up in scarcity, learning to navigate fear, and discovering how to stay steady in environments that were anything but calm. It comes from entering a new country with uncertainty, working in one of the most intense medical settings in New York City, and learning to regulate myself in the face of chaos, conflict, and discrimination. It comes from years of observing people, patients, families, colleagues, leaders, and noticing the patterns that either healed or harmed, connected or divided, strengthened or destroyed. Over time, I realized something that changed my life. Emotional intelligence is not a personality trait. It is the practice of noticing your emotions before they become your behavior, understanding the emotional context of a moment, choosing responses that create safety instead of chaos, listening with curiosity instead of defending with ego, repairing quickly instead of letting wounds deepen, and staying grounded when others are losing themselves. These are not academic concepts. These are survival skills, leadership skills, relationship skills. These are essential human skills, and they are available to anyone. You do not need a perfect childhood to develop emotional intelligence. You do not need a degree in psychology. You do not need to be naturally calm, patient, or wise. You only need willingness, the willingness to look inward, to grow, to practice, and to choose emotional maturity over emotional impulse. This book is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more of who you were always capable of being. It is about leading yourself with clarity, communicating with intention, navigating conflict with maturity, building relationships with equity, healing emotional patterns that no longer serve you, and leaving behind a legacy of emotional strength. You will not find perfection in these pages. What you'll find is practice, practical tools, and experience. Principles that have been tested in real life, in poverty, in immigration, in the emergency room, in leadership, in caregiving, and in the quiet work of becoming emotionally mature. This book is an invitation, not to master emotional intelligence overnight, but to begin a lifelong practice that will shape your identity, your relationships, and the emotional inheritance you leave behind. As you turn the page, I invite you to read not as a student, but as a fellow traveler. Not as someone seeking expertise, but as someone seeking growth. Not as someone trying to be perfect, but as someone willing to practice. Because emotional intelligence is not something you learn once. It is something you live, every day, in every moment, in every choice. And your journey into exploring real-life applications of emotional intelligence begins in the first chapter of this audio series. Your emotional growth is not just for you. It becomes part of the emotional inheritance you pass on to your family, your community, and everyone who crosses your path. Thank you for listening. I'll meet you in the next video, the first chapter of the series.